This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West, answering a question for James Normant. James has a question about sumo deadlifting. He's been doing some really wide pulls, but he's also noticed that when he brings his stance in a little bit, it's a little bit more comfortable. But he hasn't pulled heavy that way yet. Kind of wondering which stance he should stick with in order to produce the best results. You're onto something, James. You mentioned that you'd like to kind of go back and forth between the two styles as you feel it would help bring up some weaknesses. However, you're correct in also thinking that you're better off trying to master one way than you are worrying about much else. So what I would suggest is to test out your medium stance sumo pull, see where the strength is there. If that's where you're strongest, then I would continue doing them in that position. Now, if you're having trouble with lockout, then you might want to try to bring your stance back out and work the hips a little bit. Use the wide stance squats, the wide stance sumo pull as a form of a training tool to build up your hips. Or you can simply do the same thing with a box squat and not even worry about it so much on the deadlift. Also, you want to make sure that you're keeping up on your conventional pulls, because that's going to work your lower back more, and we all know that you can never have your back be too strong in powerlifting. The great Ed Cohn used to do heavy squats in his training. He'd do about a 12-week training cycle, and the last couple weeks he'd switch over to sumo pulling about 4 to 6 weeks before the meet, and he would kind of ramp up and go heavier every single week. But before that, he always used the conventional pull as a building block. And a lot of people know that he pulled 901 at 220 and has a world record there, and he's pulled over 800 many times. But a lot of people don't realize he's also pulled 887 conventional. So the guy's a monster either way you put it, but I think that's a good example of trying to mix up the styles of deadlifts. For you, again, start out with that medium stance, see what that looks like, see how heavy you can go on it, and try that. But what determines, remember this, what determines how wide you can go in both the squat and the deadlift is whether you're able to get your knees out effectively. Now, in the sumo pull, it's going to be a little bit different. You're not going to always be able to get your knees out to where your ankles are, because you're not looking to achieve the same movement through your hips. You're not asking your body to do as much of a movement with the hips. So because you're not going to go down as low, because the range of motion is going to be shortened, it's not as critical that your knee does go directly up over your ankle or all the way out to where your feet are. However, when you're raw, I think that it is important to really try to get those knees out to where the feet are, because I think that's going to give you the best leverages. When you're in powerlifting gear, it's a totally different ball game. The powerlifting gear is going to help you with your leverages and help you get into different positions that you may not be able to get into raw. Anyway, hopefully that helps. Remember, it's going to be determined by your skill set, by how flexible your hips are. If you feel you're really mobile, then maybe the wide stance is for you. If you feel like you're not so mobile, especially in your squats and your box squats, then maybe the closer stance is more suited for you, just like it is for me. And that is it from SuperTraining.tv. Later.